My What is a Woman college tour continues this week. I'll be screening the film at the University of Central Florida tonight and then moving on to the University of Houston. Now, the Houston event is apparently already creating serious tension on campus as the Houston ABC affiliate reports. Watch.
Clash of ideas could reach a boiling point Thursday at the University of Houston. Controversial conservative Matt Walsh is speaking and showing his new movie. Some in the trans community believe the film is an attack on them. Because of this, they're planning their very own event. But as ABC 13's Nick Notario discovered, it's one the conservative group welcomes.
A lot of eyes will be on this U of H building Thursday night. Inside, a speaker brought by a conservative student group will showcase a new film.
We believe as college students on a college campus that view is the minority. We believe that a majority of students do believe in genders, do believe in the difference between man and woman.
Outside, a protest is expected to take place.
This is, in my opinion, not a freedom of speech issue, but rather a hate speech and a safety issue.
The concern by some in the trans community is the topic of the speaker Matt Walsh's movie. It's called What is a Woman? Walsh says it's a look at the gender ideology movement. Trans activists say it's a film that attacks them and others who perform gender-reaffirming procedures. Eden Rose Torres, who's a trans woman, worries this film could generate anger towards her community.
I'm going to be extremely worried about the students of University of Houston, the students and the faculty. They do not deserve to feel this unsafe and be put at this much risk.
Now, I just want to clarify that when I have described the film as a bombshell documentary, I didn't mean it literally. So you're not going to be in any physical danger whatsoever, I promise you. Also, when I say that audiences have been blown away and left stunned by the movie, which is true, these are also not meant to be taken as actual physical descriptions of their reactions. These are metaphors. And hopefully that will put your mind at ease. Though I suspect that that's not the source of the confusion here. As we've covered, when they say unsafe, they mean that their understanding of the world and of themselves is vulnerable when it's made to confront contrary viewpoints. So they say unsafe, but they mean really destabilized. Their conception of reality is fragile. It's perched precariously at the top of a stack of wholly unsupported and arbitrary assertions and presuppositions. They're terrified of anything that threatens to knock the whole tower over. That's what they mean. Now, there's something perhaps ironic about this crippling fear on the left, given that the left's great project is to itself destabilize and destroy, knocking over whatever it can topple. So for a good example of this, we go elsewhere in Florida to Allendale Methodist Church in St. Petersburg, which recently played host to a drag queen during Sunday services. And this video has gone viral. The drag queen goes by the stage name Penny Cost, obviously a sacrilegious play on the sacred Christian holiday of Pentecost. But his real name is Isaac Simmons, and he's a candidate for ordination in the United Methodist Church. He's an associate pastor. He's also an atheist who proclaims that the Bible and God are, quote, nothing. Simmons makes these declarations in a slam poetry performance posted to his website, where he proves that his imitation of a poet is even less convincing than his imitation of a woman. Listen.
Look, the Bible is nothing. Nothing but poetry, pain, and performance. The Bible is no more holy than Allen Ginsberg's Howls of Life, no more peaceful than Oscar Wilde's Requiescat and Pache, and no more stronger than Tammy Faye's eyelash glue. God himself is no more tangible than the cacophony of invisible butterflies floating in new lovers' stomachs, yearning to be set free from the bondage of past harm and the locks of rightful mistrust. God himself is nothing. But if she were, she would be, yes, queening her way down the runways of Paris and Montreal, strutting on that tightrope pulled taut between absurdity and opulence, balancing between too much and never enough.
There's a lot of cheap blasphemy going on there, but let us not allow the heretical nonsense to distract us from the fact that the poetry, judged on its own merits, is extremely bad. No more tangible than the cacophony of butterflies floating in new lovers' stomachs, yearning to be set free. This is the kind of line that a student in a community college creative writing class might come up with and then hopefully be expelled for right on the spot. It's cliche upon cliche. If I were to utilize my own poetic metaphor, I would say that this guy has the intellectual depth of an inflatable kiddie pool tinted with urine and pockmarked with dead beetles and horseflies floating on the surface. Not exactly Shakespearean either, but at least it's a little bit more descriptive. In any case, Isaac Simmons, the atheist drag queen pastor, showed up to perform at a fake church in Florida a few days ago. 2 young girls were brought up on the satanic altar to be used as props for this display. And then this conversation unfolded.
Do either of you have any questions for Miss Pentecost?
I like your eyeshadow.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you like her eyeshadow. That's great. Yeah. Yeah, maybe she'll let you borrow it. When you're older, when you're allowed to wear makeup. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Well, one of the things I think is great about Miss Pentecost is she reminds us that we follow a God who calls us to not conform to things of this world, that we're supposed to be transformed by the renewal of our minds. And that means that what I think today may have to change tomorrow if I continue to renew my mind. And it's so cool that we serve a God that calls us to continue to grow and continue to change into something new. And to not be bound by the ways that the world confines us sometimes, that we're supposed to live differently.
Now, the apostate preacher there is referring to and hideously mangling Romans 12:2, which indeed warns us against conforming to things of this world and calls for the renewal of our minds. What this actually means in context, if you read the sentences before and after it, is that we must live in a way that is, quote, holy and pleasing to God, and we must use, quote, sober judgment and avoid falling into pride and self-regard. We're told to conform ourselves to the body of Christ, love what is good and hate what is evil. That's what the whole verse says. The verse, in other words, warns against precisely the sort of display we just witnessed. Drag is, among other things, profane, ostentatious, self-focused, prideful, absurd. It is anything but the product of humility and sober judgment. It's the opposite of the verse that the pastor uses to defend it. And of course, most importantly, drag is not a rejection of the things of this world. It is a thing of this world. It's a product of the decadence and moral insanity of modern American culture. It's hard to think of something that's more of the world than that. It's also a trend and a marketing gimmick. It is all of the things that Romans chapter 12 tells us to reject. But what the pretend pastor at the pretend church is really trying to say is that drag, especially when mixed with church or with children or with both at the same time, is meant to break down barriers. It's an attempt to destroy or at least weaken cultural guide rails and fences that have been put in place. And that is certainly true. This is all the left does, after all, except that the barriers the left breaks down are barriers of basic human decency, of intellectual and moral coherence, of objective truth. It silences the voice of tradition, tears down all that was built by our ancestors, simply because it was built by our ancestors. Therefore, it must be bad, they reason. That's what drag is about. It's what gender ideology is about. It's what critical race theory is about. It's what everything on the left is about. This is the sort of renewal that the pastor was talking about. Now, people on the left, they might even agree with most of my characterization up to this point. Yes, they'll proudly proclaim, we are fearlessly tearing down barriers and we're claiming our independence and our autonomy because we're not conformists like the rest of you. But what they leave out is that the old barriers, those barriers that made sense and which were rooted in natural law and objective truth and traditions stretching back through the ages, they are not knocked down to reveal a wider and wilder landscape where people are free to just roam and do whatever they want. No, the old barriers are simply replaced with new ones. And the new ones, it turns out, are far more restricting and constricting. They're also arbitrary and intellectually indefensible. So the barrier, which says that you shouldn't include children in your cross-dressing performance, that goes away, for instance. We're tearing that one down. But a new one, which says that you should not show a popular documentary on a college campus, is put in its place. So you could dress in drag and dance around kids, but you can't show a documentary dealing with a serious subject to a bunch of college students. All sorts of new restrictions are put in place. New fences are built. The new ones are all tenuous, they're all fragile, they blow over in a slight breeze. And whenever they do, a million screaming harpies will burst into tears, claiming that if we don't respect these new boundaries, people will die. So, what's the lesson here? We leave the old ways behind, but we're not freer, it turns out. Far from it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel and click the notification button to get more content like this. If you want to watch or listen to the full show, head to dailywire.com and subscribe today. You can also listen to my podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.